I never expected the night to unfold this way. Walking into that restaurant, I thought I was just doing what anyone would, hoping for a quiet evening, a hint of warmth, a sliver of love. Instead, I found myself marooned in an emotional wasteland, alone at a table for 6, clinging to a hope that was already slipping away. The place was just as I remembered it, dimly lit, golden sconces lining the brick walls, Italian ballads drifting above the clinking of glasses. It was the kind of atmosphere that couldn't be faked, a cozy warmth that was supposed to signal care, but tonight felt hollow. I'd dressed in the navy shirt Marin used to love, the one she said brought out the green in my eyes. I even wore the cologne she liked, cedar and sandalwood, sprayed it on like armor just in case. I had hoped for a moment that felt normal, something real. Not grand, not dramatic, just normal. But then the minutes stretched into hours. They never showed up. Not Marin, not Gavin. The silence was deafening. I waited. 10 minutes, then 20. I refreshed my messages, hoping for something, anything. No running late, no stuck in traffic, not even a quick emoji. I tried to keep my head clear, to stay calm. Maybe they'd walk in, laughing, full of apologies. Maybe Gavin had planned some last-minute chaos as he always did, because that was Gavin, a ball of unpredictable energy. Marin always said they got along so well because she needed that chaos to balance me out, to lighten me up. But no one showed up. The waiter brought over the wine list, his voice polite, almost too polished. "Would you like to start with a bottle? For the table?" "No, I'll wait for the others," I replied, forcing a smile that felt like it could crack any moment. An hour passed. The silence thickened. I stared at my phone, screen up, notifications off. I was already waiting for the questions. Where was everyone? What happened? But the only messages on my screen were silent ghosts. No, "I'm sorry," no explanation. Nothing. The server came back with a glass of water, voice soft now as if he knew. "Can I bring you anything while you wait?" "Just the bread," I muttered, not bothering to look up. I let my eyes wander around the restaurant, counting bricks behind the hostess stand. 38. A pattern, logic, control. Anything to hold on to when everything else felt like it was slipping through my fingers. I waited 2 full hours. Then, with a tight knot forming in my chest, I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't. I called Marin. It rang once, twice. Then the click of an answer, but it wasn't her voice. It was Gavin. For a second, I thought I'd dialed the wrong number. But no, it was her phone. I recognized the ringtone, the wallpaper. "Hey, man," he said casually, like this was nothing. "We had brunch without you." My stomach twisted. I didn't laugh. I didn't say anything. I just hung up, staring at the screen, my pulse rising. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I wasn't even sad. There was just a hollow ache in my chest. It was the space where trust used to be, and now that space was just a cold, empty void. The light had gone out, and I could only sit in the dark, blinking, trying to understand how quickly everything had faded. The waiter returned. "Sir, would you like to eat?" I waved him off gently. "No, actually. Can I get the bill for the bread?" He looked surprised, but nodded. As he walked away, I did something I hadn't planned on. I opened my camera, held up my phone, and took a quick selfie. I wasn't smiling, not really, but my eyes told the truth. Behind me, across the street, some co-workers from the firm had just walked in, laughing, clinking glasses. Completely unaware of the wreckage my night had become. Jules spotted me and waved. I waved back, and then an idea hit me. Something small, something sharp, a way to reclaim some piece of myself. After paying, I walked out. I crossed the cobbled street to the pub where they were celebrating someone's promotion. I wasn't dressed for it, wasn't in the mood for a celebration, but I needed something, anything, to remind me that I existed outside of being forgotten. "Hey, Jules," I called. "Join us." I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, why not?" They pulled me in like I was always supposed to be there. Someone handed me a drink. Another coworker joked that I looked like I had something to celebrate. "It's my birthday," I said with a shrug. The whole table lit up. "No way! Why didn't you say anything? Get him a cake." 10 minutes later, they pulled out a small chocolate cake from the fridge, left over from the promotion party, stuck a tea light candle in the middle, and handed me a plastic spoon. "Make a wish," Jules said. I didn't wish for Maureen to call. I didn't wish for Gavin to apologize. I just wished to remember this moment, to remember myself. Not the pain, but the clarity. The truth sitting in my chest, solid and final. I took a photo, me, the cake, the coworkers, the string lights overhead, all smiling. The caption? Short, simple. "Best birthday ever." I hit post. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't petty. It was a marker in time. A way of saying, "You forgot me." But I didn't forget myself. I didn't expect anything to come of it. But 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Marin. And that was when the real storm started. Had I been away from my family, I might have found it laughable. I was always the fixer, the one who took the extra folding chairs to family gatherings, the one who drove Grandma to church every Sunday, the one who remembered every birthday, anniversary, and oddball tradition we'd built over the years. I never missed a game, a recital, or a funeral. I sent flowers when Gavin got his promotion, took a day off to help Clara move out of her dorm, covered Mom's electricity bill when her pipes froze, and she didn't want to ask Gavin for help. I gave and gave and gave, and yet, here I was, discarded, reduced to irrelevance. I shut off the app and gazed out the window for a moment. The morning light streaked across the kitchen floor, catching the steam rising from my coffee cup. It felt like the world was still turning, oblivious to my presence, as though it didn't need an audience. And for the first time in a long while, neither did I. I took a sip. It tasted different, stronger, less sweet. I hadn't added sugar, and for the first time I realized I didn't miss it. Maybe I didn't need to sweeten everything anymore. The rest of the morning passed in a quiet blur. I cleaned the hallway closet, watered the plants Marin never remembered to touch, and finally cracked open the book I bought last fall, but never got around to reading. It was about finding peace through detachment. Titles I used to scoff at. Now they made perfect sense. By afternoon, I deleted a few numbers from my phone, quietly, without drama, as though pruning a plant. If something isn't growing, you let it go. The first was Gavin's, then my mother's. I hesitated before deleting her contact. It wasn't easy. I scrolled through old texts. "Happy birthday, Miles. Love you." And a photo she'd sent last. Thanksgiving. I had made the stuffing, and everyone had raved about the turkey Gavin brought from a caterer. I had laughed it off then. Now it just felt empty. I didn't block her. I just deleted her contact. I was done chasing approval that had a price tag attached. At 4 p.m., Jules from work texted, "That post from last night. You looked genuinely happy. We're going out again next week. Come if you're free." I stared at the message. I wasn't used. To people inviting me without strings attached, no obligation, no expectations. "Thanks. I'd love to," I replied. That evening, I made myself dinner. Not takeout, not something frozen. I actually cooked, chopped garlic, roasted vegetables, put on music. Not sad music, not angry music. Just something with rhythm, something that matched the steadiness I was trying to embrace. When I sat down to eat, I didn't think about Marin or Gavin or my mom. I didn't wonder if they were talking about me. I didn't rehearse some imaginary argument in my head like I usually did. I just ate. Every bite tasted earned. Later, as the apartment darkened and the quiet settled, I checked my phone one last time before bed. No new messages, no missed calls, and I felt okay. I had always thought silence would crush me, but now it felt like space, room to breathe. I tucked my phone into the nightstand drawer and lay back in bed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. No one had asked how I felt. Not on my birthday, not during the call, not in the group chat. No one had said, "Are you okay?" And that told me everything I needed to know. I had spent my life offering my heart like a dinner plate, hoping someone would notice and say, "Thank you." But most of them never did. They just took what they needed and left the crumbs behind. So I stopped offering. I curled under the blanket and turned off the lamp. For the first time in years, I didn't need background noise to fall asleep. I didn't need their approval, and I didn't miss their hearts. Monday came, just like any other day. No drama, no storm clouds, no tragic music, just the usual hum of morning traffic outside my window and the soft beep of the coffee maker finishing its cycle. It was strange how normal everything felt after what had been one of the most quietly painful weekends of my life. I didn't dread going to work that day. In fact, I welcomed it. Work had rules, schedules, deadlines. People said thank you when you helped them. People remembered your name, not out of obligation, but because you were part of something. I took the long way to the office that morning, walking 2 blocks instead of 1. Not because I needed time to think, but because the air was crisp, and I wanted to feel it. I needed to remind myself I was still here, still breathing. The world hadn't ended just because a few people I used to revolve around no longer acknowledged my existence. When I stepped into the lobby of Evergrove and Ledger, I gave the receptionist a small smile. She slid a paper cup of tea across the counter. "It's your morning mint," she said. I blinked. "You remembered?" "Of course," she said. "You're the only one who asks for mint and honey on Mondays." That small gesture anchored me, made me feel seen, a tiny ripple in an otherwise still pond. Upstairs at my desk, I didn't check social media. I didn't check the group chat. I just logged in, pulled reports, updated project sheets, answered. Client follow-ups. Mundane, maybe even boring to some. But it was peaceful. Just after 10 a.m., Derek, my manager, came by. Derek had this relaxed way about him, always in a fleece vest, no matter the weather, a travel mug always in hand. He didn't micromanage, but he noticed everything. He leaned against my desk. "Heard your birthday turned into quite the celebration," he said, smiling. "You looked like you were finally having fun." I laughed lightly. "Yeah, it wasn't planned, but it turned out okay." He nodded, then tilted his head. "Miles, can I ask you something?" "Sure. You ever think about applying for that regional coordinator position?" I blinked. "Me?" "Yeah. Why not?" "Because I think you'd be good at it," he said. "You've got this calm that people gravitate toward. You don't just manage chaos, you bring clarity." I sat back in my chair, unsure of what to say. It didn't feel impossible. It felt right. For the first time in a long time, someone was offering me something. Not because I was the backup, but because they believed in me. Later, Jules dropped a sticky note on my desk. "Still thinking about your birthday photo? You looked happy. That's rare. Keep chasing that version of you." I didn't know how to respond, but I smiled. A real smile. That night I didn't rush home. I took my time, walked through the park. I stopped by a bookstore before heading home, and picked up a journal. I hadn't kept one since college, but I felt the need to document this shift, not just what was happening, but what I was learning. That night I wrote, "Today someone offered me more because they saw more, not because I begged for it, not because I had to prove them wrong." just because they paid attention. That's the kind of people I want to be around. That's the kind of man I want to become. I didn't feel the need to share it online. No need for applause or validation. I just needed that quiet confirmation in my chest that I was doing the right thing. Marin hadn't called. Gavin hadn't texted. My mom hadn't sent a follow-up message, and for the first time, their silence wasn't painful. It was peaceful. The people who once felt like the center of my life were slowly fading into the background. And strangely, I didn't miss them. I was starting to see that maybe I wasn't the shadow. Maybe I had always been the light. They just never stayed still long enough to see it. Now I wasn't waiting for them to notice. I was stepping out on my own. It didn't come all at once. It arrived in waves, soft, calculated, wrapped in innocence. First, the photo, a text from Marin. No words, just an image of my niece Clara's daughter, maybe 5 years old, holding a crayon-colored sign. "Miss you, Uncle Miles." Her smile was bright, unaware, a little girl doing what the adults asked. It hit me, but not how Marin intended. I didn't feel regret. I didn't feel guilt. I felt sadness, sadness that my family used even the purest moments as leverage. They hadn't checked on me. They hadn't apologized for forgetting my birthday. But here they were, staging a photo to tug at my heartstrings. I didn't reply. Then came the call from my mother. It was early evening. I'd just returned from a mentoring session at the youth center. It felt good, fulfilling. I was heating up leftovers when I saw her name on my phone. I hesitated before answering. "Hi, Mom." There was a pause, deliberate, a sigh. "Miles," she said, soft and slow, that tone only mothers use to sound more disappointed than angry. "What happened to the boy who always said family comes first?" I stayed silent, not defiant, but because I already knew how this would go. "I saw Clara's post," she continued. "She's heartbroken. Marin says you've shut everyone out. This isn't like you." My grip tightened on the phone. I sat down at the table. "Do you know what isn't like me?" I said, keeping my voice steady. "Being completely forgotten on my birthday. Sitting at a table for 2 hours while my wife and brother ate brunch without me. Having my feelings mocked in a group chat. That's what isn't like me." Another pause. "Miles, I just don't want this family to fall apart," she said, voice cracking. "We've lost so much. Can't you just be the bigger person?" There it was, the phrase, "be the bigger person." As if my only role was to absorb every cut with grace, to bleed quietly so no one else had to feel discomfort. "I've been the bigger person my whole life," I said, "and all it got me was being taken for granted." She didn't answer, immediately. "Miles, they're your family. Family isn't supposed to make you feel small," I replied. "It's not supposed to weaponize guilt when you finally draw a boundary." Her voice dropped. "You're not a victim." "I never said I was," I said firmly. "But I'm not a doormat. Not anymore." There was another sigh, longer this time, the disappointed kind. "Your father's not happy with all this." I almost laughed. Was he ever? Is that supposed to mean something to me? Her gasp was sharp, but I didn't walk it back. "I have to go," I said, tired. She didn't say goodbye, just silence. Then the line went dead. I set the phone down. The silence in my apartment felt earned, not heavy. They hadn't reached out when I was hurting, but now that I'd said no, now that I'd reclaimed a piece of myself, I was the problem. It was always the same pattern. If I stayed quiet, I was loved. If I asked for better, I was selfish. I was done playing that role. The next morning, I received a text from Gavin. No greeting, no context, just, "This isn't how adults handle things." I stared at it. No apology, no accountability. Just another subtle jab, another attempt to frame me as the emotional one, the difficult one. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new note on my phone, titled it, Things I will no longer apologize for, and started typing, I will no longer apologize. For saying no when I need to. For prioritizing my peace over someone's expectations. For not attending events where I'm not respected. For letting people face the consequences of their behavior. For existing without permission. That list felt more powerful than any reply I could have sent. That evening, Jules invited me to a poetry reading at a local cafe. It wasn't my usual scene, but I went. The place was cozy with string lights and soft chairs. People read their truths on stage. Some were nervous, some shaky, but every voice was met with applause. There was one poem I still remember. A girl in her 20s read it. I am not the story you told about me. I am the chapter. You skipped over because it made you uncomfortable. I almost stood up and clapped. That was exactly how I felt. I wasn't dramatic. I was just the inconvenient truth. Later, I walked slower. I looked up at the buildings, the people rushing by, the sky above. It was easy to shrink yourself to make room for others. I'd done it often. But that era was over. The next morning, Marin emailed me again. Subject, please think this through. I didn't open it. I already had. It was a group message. Sunday, 3 p.m. Family meeting at my parents' house. I stared at the message. No one asked if I was free, if I wanted to. Be there. It was phrased like an order, dressed in casual language. No question mark. It wasn't signed by anyone, but I knew whose idea it was. Marin. I hadn't heard from her since the birthday post. No calls, no texts, except for the photo of Clara with her sign and that guilt-laced email. Now I was being summoned like a child who'd misbehaved. Not once in the message did it say, "We miss you," or "Let's talk." It was just, "Be there." I closed the message. No need to reply. I typed, "We'll meet when someone, anyone, can look me in the eye and say I matter more than your reputation." I hit send and turned my phone face down. Hours passed with no reply. I went to the grocery store, cooked dinner, lived my life with intention. At 11 p.m., a voicemail from Gavin arrived. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail like spam. After it finished, I listened to it once. Miles, come on. You're really going to let this spiral? You're making Mom sick. You embarrassed us with that birthday post. Now you're acting like you're the victim again. Just grow up, man. Be there on Sunday and fix this. I sat back in my chair. You embarrassed us. You're acting like the victim. Grow up. The script was the same as always. Say less. Take more. Apologize for making anyone uncomfortable. Be the good one. But I wasn't that version of me anymore. The next day, I went to work. Jules slid me a sticky note at lunch with a doodle of a volcano and the words, "Let it all erupt." Some ash clears the air. At 2 p.m., I booked a meeting room. No distractions. Just me, a blank page, and the realization that I didn't owe anyone my presence when it came with conditions. When it meant bending back into a shape that didn't fit anymore. Wrote, I have always shown up. I have always given more than I received. I am no longer interested in peace that requires my silence. I do not need to be in the room where I'm only welcomed if I apologize first. I am not broken. I am not dramatic. I am not selfish. I closed the notebook. They didn't want a conversation. They wanted a confession. They wanted me to fold, to cave. Not this time. Later, I bought candles from a local shop. The woman asked if I was buying them for a date. I smiled. No, it's a date with myself. That's even better. Sunday, 3 p.m., arrived like an uninvited guest, but I wasn't at my parents' house. I was at a museum downtown. I stood in front of a painting of a stormy sea. It looked like chaos, but the brushstrokes had purpose, intention. Even the rage had rhythm. I wasn't lost. I was becoming. Later that night, I turned my phone back on. Predictably, there were messages. You're so selfish. Wow. So this is who you are now. Call me, please. I read them once and archived the thread. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was finally free. Because nothing is lonelier than sitting in a room full of people who love the version of you that stays quiet. And nothing is more powerful than choosing to leave that room on your own terms. I lit one of the candles. It smelled like pine and amber. Fresh beginnings. I whispered to the version of me that used to beg for approval. You didn't fail them. They failed to see you. And that is not your fault. 4 words stared back at me, cold, like they belonged on a citation slip. I sat still, letting the weight of it settle. I already knew the rest. I could have written it myself in his tone, but I opened it anyway. Miles, your absence at Clara's wedding was noted. You embarrassed your mother. People talked. You put yourself above the family. We raised you better than this. If you want this family again, fix what you broke. Dad. No warmth. No mention of why I wasn't there. No understanding of the chaos that followed. Just a formal reprimand like I was one of his old subordinates. Not his son. I didn't reply, not at first. I closed the email, logged out, and went for a walk. The streets buzzed with weekday chaos. Buses, ringing phones, people rushing past cafes with coffee cups clutched like weapons, but I barely noticed. Those words echoed. If you want this family again, like a club I'd been kicked out of for failing some unspoken dress code, I ended up at the community center. Not planned, but familiar. I peeked in and saw Jules at the front desk sorting flyers for next week's job fair. She looked up and smiled. You're not on the schedule today. I know, I said. Just needed to be around people who don't make me feel like I'm on trial. She walked over, leaning on the counter. Rough morning? Something like that. I showed her the email. She read it, slowly, expression unchanged. When she finished, she looked at me. Want me to tell you what I see? I nodded. You got a note from a man obsessed with appearances. He didn't even care why you weren't there, just that you made him look bad. I exhaled, feeling lighter. That's what I thought. She tapped the counter. You're not crazy, Miles. You're just refusing to audition for a role you never wanted. I nodded. Half joking, I should forward it to you. Keep it on file as a case study. Actually, do it. Might help one of the kids see what manipulation looks like when it's dressed up as concern. I did, I added. More proof family isn't who shares your name. It's who shows up. I helped her stack chairs, sat in on a career prep session. A teen named Theo asked how to explain a gap in his resume. You're not defined by your gaps, I said. You're defined by how you show up next. When I got home, my inbox had 2 new messages. One from my mother. Call me, please. We need to talk about your father. And one from Marin. Let's talk after Clara's honeymoon. There's a lot we should say. After Clara's honeymoon, like my pain had to wait its turn, I hovered over Marin's message, then hit delete. Not angry, not surprised, just clear. If I only mattered when it didn't interfere with their big day, then I didn't matter at all. I ordered takeout, curled up on the couch. My apartment was small, simple, but safe. I let the quiet wash over me. Later, I opened my journal. Today, I realized I've spent most of my life waiting for people to choose me, not in speeches or photos, but in the moments that matter when no one's watching. They never did. So now I choose me. No more proving. No more begging. No more waiting to be invited back into a room I built. I closed the journal, lit a candle, and stared out the window. I didn't know if my father would write again. I didn't know what Marin would do after the honeymoon. I didn't care. They were all waiting for me to crawl back and apologize for what they'd broken and blamed on me. But I wasn't playing that part anymore. I turned 34 quietly. No reservations. No waiting at a table for anyone who didn't plan to show up. That morning, soft sunlight filtered through the blinds, the smell of coffee filling the kitchen. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the weight of the day. No panic. No hope that maybe this year someone would surprise me. Jules and the others planned something small. Lunch on the rooftop terrace. Cake, a messy, imperfect chocolate thing with too much frosting. I laughed because it was exactly the opposite of the cakes Marin used to order. This one was chaotic, homemade, beautiful. I didn't post about it. I didn't need to. At the end of lunch, they gave me a card, thick with signatures, some short, others personal. You make work feel safe. Thank you for being our anchor. I held the card a while before sliding it into my bag. Not sentimental, but because this was the love I'd forgotten existed. Quiet, consistent, honest. That evening, I walked home instead of driving. The city was golden, the sky brushed with honey. I passed people laughing, kids with ice cream, an older couple, dancing to a street musician. Everything felt soft, real. At home, a box was waiting. No return address, just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen in months. I opened it slowly. Inside was a hand-poured candle with a wooden wick and a card taped to the lid. The note read, "Thought you'd like this. It smells like winter mornings." I opened the card. A photo of us from our wedding, black and white, elegant. On the back, in Marin's handwriting, I see now what I refused to see then. I'm sorry for everything. I didn't cry, didn't get angry, because it didn't change anything. I had already seen it long before. I had made peace with the silence, with the absence. I placed the photo on the counter, lit the candle. The scent was gentle. Pine, cedar, maybe vanilla. Clean, warm. I didn't text her. Not because I was holding a grudge, but because closure isn't something you send as a gift when it's convenient. It's earned by showing up when it's hard. She hadn't. I lit that candle for me, not for her, to honor the man I'd become in the silence. The man who didn't measure his worth by how many seats he filled at a dinner table. Later that night, I sat on the balcony with a blanket, that same chipped mug of tea. The city settled into evening. Somewhere nearby, a saxophone played a slow, wandering melody. It didn't need to go anywhere. Neither did I. I thought about the people who said family first while treating me like an afterthought, the ones who reacted with outrage, not apology, when I stopped dancing for their comfort. Used to chase those people. Now I choose myself. And in choosing me, I've found others. Co-workers who became friends, strangers who became mentors, teens in a community program who reminded me what it means to keep going. I looked at the card again, tucked beside me, in the chair. The message wasn't empty, but it came too late. Forgiveness wasn't a door she had to knock on. I'd already opened it. Not for her, but for me. Because healing wasn't a performance. It was this moment, this peace. And so, on my birthday, I made one final decision. I will build my own table. Not a metaphorical one where I hope to be invited back, but a real life carved from truth, clarity, and chosen love. Only those who bring more than a smile for the camera will get a seat.